Dr. Prowley, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So you worked with the AP reporting team to analyze Camp Mystic's many flood map exemptions. Does anything concern you about your findings?
Well, yes, in the sense that they were spending time and money to appeal these maps. So they have to go through a process that FEMA sets up to do this. And oftentimes it involves, getting new studies done to see whether these maps are accurate or not. And my concern was, why were they spending their resources and time and money trying to move these lines on a map and get properties out of the official flood zone, when I think that time and money should have been better spent trying to get buildings out of, risky areas, trying to perhaps change the buildings so that they were more safe and protective. So that's my main concern, is that it doesn't seem like perhaps their priority wasn't necessarily on flood mitigation and trying to get the campers more safe, but rather on really trying to get out of these official flood zones for whatever reasons.
And the camp, that area you bring up, it has a history of floods, though of course none like this. Why would FEMA grant all these requests for exemptions?
Well, FEMA, the law allows property owners and communities, in fact, to appeal flood maps. So it gives people a chance to say, well, according to your criteria, these buildings or these pieces of property are not in the official flood zone. In other words, they are above the base flood elevation levels for these 100-year flood zones. So if there's good evidence backing up these appeals, FEMA, by law, to some extent, has to approve them. So I think that the onus is partly more on the property owners for pursuing this in the first place, again, rather than really spending their efforts and time elsewhere.
And FEMA's response, too, suggests that floodplain maps are inherently subject to change. So what then is the role of these maps when it comes to decisions that impact safety, not just insurance costs?
Yes, well, the flood maps should be designed, the whole program was designed to try to disincentivize people from living in these high-risk areas, partly by, as you mentioned, by carrying an insurance premium if you're within these zones, but also regulating the structure. So basically increasing the cost of developing within these flood zones. So that's really the intent of the program. But I think, and it's supposed to also, create a conversation at the local level about what is the real risk of flooding. And that's what the maps, I think, were originally designed to do, was to start those conversations, to provide information for communities.
And of course, risks can change over time. FEMA doesn't regulate property development. We touched on that. Should we look then to local governments to decide how close to the water to allow a camp, or anyone for that matter, to build?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the other big component of this is that local communities can go above and beyond what's required by FEMA in terms of development within these flood zones. There are some minimum requirements. So if you're a part of the NFIP program, the National Flood Insurance Program, you are subject to minimal requirements, but communities can go above and beyond that if they so choose. Unfortunately, not many of them do. And I think that's a real problem, because that would actually help to mitigate the risk and probably have saved lives if you can regulate it even more strictly.
It's too early right now to know where and whether rebuilding will take place in the Kerrville area. How should floodplain management guide future development, or in this case, redevelopment?
Well, I mean, you would hope that in the wake of a tragedy like this, that it would spur more attention to this and more local restrictions, zoning laws and restrictions. I think sometimes people have a short memory, and the flood, is over, and people sort of move on. And you see this actually in terms of individual behavior as well, that people might carry insurance after a flood. So they will start buying insurance after a flood, and then after a few years, if it doesn't flood again, they'll drop that insurance. And so the attention has to stay focused on this risk. And we all know that the risk is going up. And so you would hope that this spurs on some political will to try to be more protective. I know that in the past, Kerr County, some officials did try to get the population and the community to focus on this risk, and were somewhat unsuccessful in really changing local regulations. And I would hope that that changes. But we'll have to wait and see.
Indeed, we will. And from what we've seen and heard in Kerr County, this is a conversation many of them are very eager to have. Dr. Prowley, thank you so much for helping us better understand the role of floodplain management in this disaster and maybe preventing disaster in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe and leave us a comment below to let us know your thoughts on this video. And don't forget, you can watch full episodes of Austin Insight for free in the PBS app.